Hello, hello, and welcome to today's episode of Saddest Night Out. My name is Roy, and I am the host of this daily podcast, and it's primarily about music and creative culture in London. On this episode, I'm talking to two performers, two artists who have been on this podcast before, who are playing one of my shows in the near future, but in the nearer future, they are playing a show this Friday, the 15th of November, at the Finborough Arms. They are Dan Caleb and Georgia Maria. We actually got together for this conversation Tuesday, so earlier this week. It was after all of our respective work days. We got together in Camden because these two artists have some pretty interesting irons in the fire. They've got some really cool projects on the horizon. And I am always in need of extra motivation to pursue my own ideas. So it really helps to hear what my friends are getting up to. So that's mainly what you'll hear on this episode, them talking about what it is they're getting up to in the near future. And also, quite interestingly, the roads they have walked to arrive at this moment in time where they've got these ideas, they've got these projects, and they are seeing them through. So once again, this is me talking to Dan Caleb and Georgia Maria. And as always, I'll catch up with you a bit more afterwards. Enjoy. We're live. It's been a while since I've done this, so please bear with me. I'm in the company of two esteemed musicians who happen to be playing one of my shows later this year. Would you kindly introduce yourselves? I'll start with the person on my right.
I'm Dan Caleb.
Sorry, I'm on a beanbag. My name is Georgia Maria.
So, folks, on all of our calendars is the date December 17th, because that's when we are playing a show together at Road Trip and The Workshop. Dan, we're all going to be in your band. How do you feel about that?
Really excited.
First time having a band behind you?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I'm on bass,
Mm-hmm.
Georgia shredding on the electric guitar,
Hell yeah.
and Leo is going to play drums. And we haven't rehearsed yet, but I can tell you now it's going to be sick.
I heartily agree. So as well as assembling a band for the first time, what else have you been up to lately? You've made some pretty big moves recently.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
So In Support of Records is the label that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's been on my mind for probably like 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer. I've been like thinking of trying to find a way of releasing music and having a charitable element behind it as well. But only recently I gave it some structure. Really, the Elliott Smith tribute night, which you came to, was the first event, and I only knew that a couple of months after I realised I was organising it. But it suddenly occurred to me, okay, we're putting on an event, it's for charity, and it's looking like it's going to be like packed, so it kind of makes sense that I can get this up and running now.
Yeah. So you
You
said that 3 or 4 years you've been thinking about it. The Elliott Smith night was the first event you really put on. So from the start, was it always a matter of putting on live music events paired with a charity?
Actually, no. When I came up with the idea, I wasn't really interested in playing live so much. I'd only played a few times at open mics, and I really hated it because I was so nervous and had such a miserable experience at them.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
For some reason, I just kept persevering.
Yeah, oh god, well done. The game started. Yeah. So at the start, it was just putting on events with other people.
Releasing music. That was it. Just releasing music. Basically, like when I started out writing songs, I wanted to record and never play live. And so it was like, okay, how can I come up with a way of promoting music without ever having actually for people to see me play? Like, okay, it's not this isn't easy. Like,
Yeah.
There's only really one guy I can think of that really does that, and that's Keaton Henson, who's a singer-songwriter who hardly ever plays live. I think he suffers from stage fright, and he's pretty successful. Like, I'm not quite sure how he managed to do that. His music is pretty good, but nevertheless, I still think that there's a lot of good music out there, and it's very difficult to get heard, even if you're making good music. So, like, whoever does his PR, like, congrats. But yeah, so I was looking at, so it did, like, it did seem like a way of, like, okay, people might be more interested if it's not for profit.
Yeah.
So that was back then, like, probably 5 years ago, which. So this next event that I'm putting on, which is really the first actual event under In Support of Records is for the first single that's going to come out on the label.
Who's
So
that single by, Dan?
It's by a guy called Dan Caleb. I don't know.
whoa,
If you know him. He's a
yeah.
singer-songwriter, London-based.
Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah, so it's one of my songs.
Okay.
But the song itself was written about 6 or 7 years ago, and I recorded it 5 years ago. But I just only got around to just re-recording the vocals, and I actually changed a couple of the lyrics as well. So back then, I was going to release the song for charity, and had it all set up and mixed and everything, but I had no real... I put it up on SoundCloud, but I had no real like way of getting interested in it.
Yeah.
Also, like, I just wasn't confident enough. Like, I think I'd built up the idea in my head way too much, and when it came to actually like putting it into practice,
Yeah.
I was too afraid, really. Like, I was afraid of what the reaction would be.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of what we do is just crossing thresholds of fear. Just picking up an instrument in the first place, knowing you're not good at it, and just sucking for the first time, but still continuing. You have to break through that. And then there's the almighty task of letting someone else hear what you've made. And just the fear that, oh, what if I don't sound how I think, or anything like that. Any time you get to a point where it's about sharing your stuff with the wider world, especially with the internet, I felt this way too, hence why I started doing my thing, which is... I feel like I'm such a quiet voice in a massive, massive room. There's no way anyone's going to hear what I'm doing. And then even if someone does hear it, does it sound as good as I think it does? Maybe I shouldn't. So I can imagine. Yeah, in your head, just the imagining of connecting the dots and making something happen. Yeah, it sounds good.
I think, like a lot of performers as well, like there's a certain degree of like this dichotomy of the mind where you actually think what you're doing is really good, and then you think it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to rein that in, like, 'cause you're really excited about putting this thing out, and you know people are gonna love it, and then the other side of you is going, oh my, what are you doing? Like, who do you think you are?
Mistake. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
So, before you decided to make yourself the first release, it sounds like you had this idea in mind and you had other artists in mind who you were hoping to release music from through your label. Is that still the plan going forward? Are you like the test subject, the first release, and then...
Really what I decided recently when the idea came to resurrect this, because it was on the back burner for at least 2 years, it was just, okay, the main objective is don't overthink it.
Yeah.
And so eventually I was just like, I've got to just test it out, like, just do it and learn as you go.
Yeah.
I'm pretty meticulous. I like to plan things out, and I overdid that the first time around. So this time I kind of planned it insofar as, the single that I've released, it had a very specific subject matter. It's about someone I knew who a friend of mine who passed away around that time 7 odd years ago, I think it was. She had ovarian cancer, and she was the wife of a really close family friend, so I knew that I wanted to donate proceedings to the proceeds to charity, and then as it so happened, like a guy I know from like meditation groups, he posted a GoFundMe link on Facebook, which was for a friend of his daughter, and she's called Susie Aries, and she has ovarian cancer, and she's raising money for the treatment. So the treatment that she requires it's an immunotherapy treatment, and she can't get it on the NHS. It's not available because it's quite a new form of treatment that they're still researching. And so she needs to raise £250,000 to receive 2 years of the treatment, which is what she requires, and she's raised half of it. So she started the treatment, she's got the first year's worth of funding. When I saw my friend's post, it just made a lot of sense to raise money for Susie as well as part of this.
Wow.
So that's what I'm doing. So half of the proceeds from the event that I'm putting on to launch the single is going to Susie Aries' GoFundMe page, and half will go to an ovarian cancer charity called Ovarian Cancer Action.
So when is the event?
The event's on the 15th of November,
Uh-huh.
so that's a Friday night.
Perfect. So where's it happening?
And it's at the Finborough Arms, which is in Earls Court. I had a previous single launched there over the summer, and it seemed like it went really well.
The
It's had a
return.
nice, it was a really nice vibe in there. It's somewhere where George and I have played quite a lot before, and it's just very sort of convenient and nice place to hold it.
Cool. So that's next Friday, the 15th of November, at the Finborough Arms.
Yeah, and
Who
there are a
else
couple
is-
of support acts playing. I know
Yeah.
you're just about to ask. I've
Yes.
preempted.
There you go. So who else is on the lineup for that event?
So a friend of mine called Harry Quinn, who you know, because that's where pretty much I met you for the second time, but that's
Yes.
the first time I was on your podcast.
It
It was
was,
Harry
yeah.
Quinn's first band show, I think.
Yeah.
Full circle. And then Georgia, who sat next to me here.
how come we Welcome with the beanbag.
And she's bringing her own element to the show as well, which she can tell you about. She's currently in the process of recording her first EP. And
Woo-hoo.
I'm going to let her take over at this point.
Yes. Georgia, please continue.
Hello. So we're chatting about what my the theme of my set's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I'm going to be because a lot of people do a single launch, they do an EP launch or an album launch. They're exceedingly ambitious and
Mhm.
unsigned, but what I'm doing is actually a sort of a pre-EP launch, and what I'm doing with it is to have the songs that are contenders, I feel, for the EP, my strongest 8 or 9 songs, play them in the set and have people essentially vote on the ones that they connect with just on a first listen.
Right.
Just their initial impact with no sort of familiarity bias. And have them just on a little piece of paper. I'll give them a piece of paper with the song names. They just put a little mark next to, say, 3 that they feel are standouts for them individually.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, and after Dan's played his headline set after me, I'll tally them all up and see what the results are, and that will directly inform my decision as to what songs will make the cut for the EP.
I can't think of anyone else I've ever heard of doing that before. So
Actually, neither have I, which I'm feeling quite chuffed about.
So I salute you for that alone right there. So 8 or 9 songs,
Yeah.
they've all been in the running for a while. How many songs do you think will make the final cut?
I think the EP is going to be probably 4 songs, possibly 5, if I'm really torn between 2, but I think most likely 4 songs.
And are you fairly objective about all of them, so you don't mind what gets chosen, or there's some that are a bit close that you hope?
There are the ones that I think are wild cards. I feel like I'm sort of quietly quite hoping that they get picked, and the ones that I've written more recently, just purely because as songwriters we feel like our newest work is our best work.
Yeah.
I have a song that I still have yet to play live that I want to include in my set on the 15th, and I think it's pretty cool, and I think it would be a cool addition to the EP because it sounds quite different to other songs that I've written so far.
Whoa.
But the thing as well is with my songs, that I've written this year, and they've all been written this year, they're all quite different from each other. They're all sort of disparate, and that's really the reason why I can't really pick between them, because there's one that's, they're all sort of in a similar direction. It's not like, oh, one's a reggae song, one's a hardcore heavy metal song, or anything like that. They're all sort of in a folk rock, slightly prog tinged vein of music, but they're all pretty different structurally, thematically, speed wise. Some are very fast, some are very slow. So I
guess because
I'd
they're
just
quite
be
different,
really
they're not
interested to
competing.
hear what people respond to on first listen, and that is what this EP is going to be about for me. Is just songs that have an impact immediately.
Is this the first EP you're releasing?
First EP I've ever released.
Do you know when you're going to release the EP? So you don't know the track list yet, pending the show, but do you know when you want to put it out?
It's going to be out, I would say, probably February or March next year, thereabouts. Early next year, early 2020.
And the times I've seen you play, in fact, both of you, when I've seen you play, you've both been solo acoustic with some incredible voices, if I do say so myself.
Thank
You're
you.
the kind of performers where, because with our open mics, we can see online who signed up. And when I see your names, I'm like, oh, okay, that person's come. Got that to look forward to. Dan, we mentioned how you're going to have a band in December. Georgia, the stuff you're recording for this, is it with a band? Is it you solo? What's it going to sound like?
The stuff on the recordings is going to be full band. And I've recorded one song already, just the one song that I feel is, you said if I had a personal preference or, are any songs stronger in my opinion. There was one that I felt stood above the rest, and I've just laid that one down for starters with my producer.
Yeah.
And the other 3-4 are up for grabs. But the one that we've laid down is a song called Musketeers. I'm going to be putting it out as the first song off the EP. And it's got guitar solos, it's got heavy drums with lots and lots of fills, possibly too many fills, but you guys be the judge. That's my personal taste. As you'll probably know if you've heard me play guitar as well. It's going to be pretty heavy. And I continue to perform solo acoustic because I feel like I can still deliver those songs that way, but it'll be really helpful to have them recorded in that way. So people can have that in the back of their minds when they're listening to me deliver them solo.
Wow. Guys, we're coming to the end of the year. We all have some pretty ambitious plans in the near future and a bit further beyond. At the start of this year, did you have these ideas already? Or was there a point during the year when you kind of had a eureka moment and thought, right, I'm going to release my first EP like this, or I'm going to start putting on my own shows? Dan, I'll start with you. Was your head in this mindset at the start of this year?
No, I don't think it was, actually. Like, the year's kind of like blossomed for me. And sometimes it's been eureka moments, and there's been more than one. And sometimes it's been happy accidents. So, for example, I think it was around like March this year that I sent a message to Rob from the podcast, the Elliott Smith podcast, and I asked him whether he was planning any event for Elliott Smith's 50th birthday. He said no, but let me know if you're doing one. So that was how that was the first show that I'd ever thought of organising. But I knew that I really love Elliott Smith, and I really I've always wanted to sort of put on an event for him. So my single launch that I mentioned that I played in July at the Finborough Arms, my previous single, was one of those happy accidents really, where I'd booked the Finborough Arms for the Elliott Smith tribute night, but I had realised that I wanted a bigger venue because the Finborough Arms has a capacity of 80, possibly stretched to 100, but I realised that the Finsbury, which is where I ended up holding it, could have an audience of say 50 or 80 and still feel busy, but also if they take the tables out you can get 200 in there, which is around what we got in the end. So when I messaged the Finborough Arms a few days after booking it to say I'm really sorry, I'm going to cancel the booking, they weren't terribly happy with that. And I realised that I'd made a bit of a problem for myself. Like, I'd suddenly become a promoter and I was in too deep. So what I did was I said, well, look, I said I'd reckon I can get 40 to 80 people at that night, and instead, how about we move the date a couple of weeks before? It'll be my birthday weekend. I reckon I get 40 to 80 people to a single launch. And but much to my surprise, they said, yeah, cool, let's go for it. I thought they'd just be like, well, you flaked on us once, why would we book you again? But they were like, yeah, cool, let's go for it. And it all panned out really well. And so within 2 weeks, I'd gone from not running a single. In fact, at that point, I had no idea I was releasing a single. I was like, oh, I better get my skates on and finish recording this song and start promoting. Yeah. So that's what I mean about this happy accident. From sort of not having a single in mind to release and vaguely having an idea about an Elliott Smith tribute show, I now had 2 shows that I was promoting that both went really well, and I, it gave me a taste for for what's hopefully going to come next within Support of Records.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that it worked out so well. And that's a fantastic story right there about how you went from nothing to 2 in pretty short order. But I really like that the experience was so good for you that you're like, okay, let's keep these wheels turning. What's the next thing I'm going to put on?
I was wary, and Georgia would know this because I said to her, you know, when the Elliott Smith tribute show came about, I was wary that this was like the pinnacle of like what had been a really busy summer with releasing a song, releasing a music video, and putting on my single launch. And I knew that this was probably the biggest moment, and that it would therefore mean the greatest letdown the following day or the following week.
That night, the night had finished, you know, all the acts had played, it had been a phenomenal success by anyone's standards. Mm-hmm. Everyone was heading home, you know, in high spirits. Lots of new connections had been made. It was a beautiful night, and I look round, and as the room's clearing out, Dan is sat by himself on the stage looking very despondent. And I say, Dan, what's wrong? What's going on? You just completely smashed it. You brought this night into being. And he goes, I don't know what's next though. I'm like, it's only just finished.
But already you're like, oh man, how am I going to top this? This is
it's a slight issue I have.
He's already sulking.
As I said, I think I mentioned before that I plan things, and I'm a bit of a forward thinker. Sometimes I could definitely do with just enjoying the moment a bit more. But I was wary that, you know, it can be a bit of a letdown when you're riding a wave, and then you know, after the end of it, you're like, well, what now?
Yeah.
And so I hadn't really like planned my next single or anything like that, but you know, I knew I wanted to keep going, and it's really like exciting. You know, a couple of months since that, like I've now got this label venture, mm-hmm. and my first band gig with you guys coming up. Yes. So those are 2 like really exciting things for me to be doing, and I think we strive and need to keep the momentum going somehow. Yeah. So I'll no doubt be really disappointed after working on the 17th of December trying to figure out what to do next.
I'll know where to find you once we're finished with our set. You'll be side of stage like, oh man, what am I going to do?
Sulking.
And Georgia, what about you? Was your head thinking about these things at the start of this year? Did you have the EP idea in mind?
Yes, I did actually. Well, the answer to that question for me is sort of yes and no, in the sense that I went into this year really like, okay, I'm going to turn things around. I'd been exclusively a covers artist up until that point. I'd just been playing, you know, shows to kind of put food on the table, pay my new rent in my new flat at that point. And I didn't really have... my ambitions had sort of fizzled out in a weird way. At a certain point at the end of last year, I thought to myself, wow, what... You know, as a lot of musicians do when they realise they have to make a living, they get really focused on that, and then they think, wow, what happened to plan A? Yeah. And actually for me, it came at such a good turning point in my life in general, that that wave of momentum of going, okay, right, January the 1st, let's start doing this, mm-hmm. has continued to carry me through this whole year. And everything has happened this year, absolutely everything. In terms of my artist project, I renamed myself Georgia Maria, set up my Facebook page on January the 1st, and I set myself a load of crazy missions. I haven't quite hit them all out the park, but I decided I was going to do 200 gigs this year. I think it's still possible. I'm still fighting for the 200 gigs by the end of the year. It's going to be tight. It's going to be tight. But yeah, no, everything has happened this year. I met a fantastic producer, the producer of my dreams, about a month ago. He's a guy called Dax Lineaire. He's the guy who I'm working on this EP with in a studio that he built with his own hands called Puzzle Factory Studios. It's pretty badass, really sort of futuristic vibe in there. And he's been doing this for about 18 years. He's got awards back in Australia where he's from. So I'm finally, you know, in the studio with my songs, with a serious producer, making this happen. So I'm pretty elated about the whole thing.
All systems go.
I suppose so, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you both very much. I'm guessing we've all come from work. We've all gathered together here. Thank you very much for making the time to talk to me. Friday the 15th is November. There's the next chance to see both of you doing your thing. December the 17th is when you see the 3 of us in the same band. laying this town to waste. And December
Not
18th is
something you want to miss.
exactly.
Just to mention, so yeah, on the 15th, at the single launch that I'm putting on, where Georgia will be playing songs from her EP, with the audience will be deciding which ones. It will be £10 on the door or £8 in advance on Eventbrite, and all the proceeds will be split equally between Susie Aries, who we're raising money for her cancer treatment, and Ovarian Cancer Action. And there'll also be, I think, a bit of a theme of my In Support of Nights is like, I'm going to have a raffle, which you ran the raffle, Roy,
Yes.
at the Elliott Smith night.
Roy
It was
the
an Elliott
raffle
Smith
man.
themed raffle. Well, this time I've got a couple of friends who have sort of start-up businesses where they, one of them sort of makes jewellery, and she's also a Reiki practitioner. So she's making a sort of gift basket for this raffle. Another friend who makes these really cool like eye pillows and handbags and things, she's donating a couple of items as well. And I think I'm going to offer a Reiki healing as well as one of the prizes, because I'm a Reiki practitioner.
Oh, cool. All right.
Well, that to look forward to as well.
Yeah. And then I imagine December 18th, we might find Dan sulking again about 2020. What am I going to do that year now? I've done so much this year. But thank you both so much for your time tonight, and I will see you
Absolute
both
pleasure.
next Friday.
Thank you, Roy.
Cheers.
Thanks, all right.
And that was that. Thank you once again enormously to Dan Caleb and Georgia Maria for making the time to talk to little old me. That event once again is on Friday the 15th of November at the Finborough Arms in Westminster. If you check out the description for this episode, I'll post all the links I can find for the event, where to buy tickets, where you can find out more about Dan Caleb and Georgia Maria. And trust me, I'm sure after listening to this, you'll want to find out more. Dan Caleb, In Support of Records, is the name to keep an eye on. Ovarian Cancer Action and Susie Aries' GoFundMe page are the causes for which money is being raised at this event, so do go and get your tickets, and with any luck I will see you there as well. This was a really fun conversation to have, never mind record for a podcast, just to spend some time in the company of these two wonderful people who I did first meet through the open mics. I'm becoming ever more appreciative of the value of time and who you choose to spend it with. If you get the opportunity to spend time with people, and when you part ways, you feel a little bit lighter. You feel as though maybe a problem was solved or just a concern was shared. You just feel that you can really unburden your soul a little bit, and that exchange goes both ways. Those are the people that you should really be grateful to have in your life. And that is definitely how I'll describe Dan Caleb and Georgia Maria. And I've recorded this outro about 20 times, and it's almost midnight on a Saturday night. So I mentioned at the start of this conversation that it's been a while since I've done this, so please go easy on me. I didn't realize just how true that phrase would end up being, because it has taken me a while to finally sit down and make the time to put this episode up. So apologies for the delay, but I hope you do enjoy it all the same. And do check out those links that I'll post in the description to find out more about this event and these artists. I am clearly overdue my bedtime, so I'll just say thank you all very much for listening. When I talk about how much I am learning to appreciate the value of time, I am always grateful to anyone who's listening to this and who has chosen to spend their time with me. So thank you very much for doing so. And until next time, take care.